Welcome, welcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Calm Balm podcast. I'm your host, Raquel Sands, career confidant for free spirits. Today, I'm joined by Larisa Noonan. Did I pronounce that okay?
Miss Larisa, like Teresa.
Larisa. Okay. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And she has been walking the path of a witchy healer for over 25 years as an ancestral healing practitioner, certified existential kink shadow work coach, orthobionomist. Did I pronounce that okay?
Bionomist, yes.
Bionomist, thank you. Trauma resolution centered body and energy worker, and a ritualist. That's amazing. Now she supports other witchy healers in creating spirit guided businesses and calling in right fit clients. Welcome, Larisa. So great to have you.
Thank you, Raquel. I'm really happy to be here.
So my first question that I ask all my guests is, what is one piece of media? So it could be a book, show, movie, magazine, I don't know, that has changed or shaped your life in some way, and how?
I love this question. And there have been a lot, especially books. I'm a prolific reader. But hearing this question, the one that's jumping to mind right now for me is a book called Grandfather by Tom Brown Jr. And in this book, he's telling the story of his mentor, grandfather, who was an Apache scout. And in it, he's describing this time when grandfather was going through a time of deep, just kind of agony and grief over the state of the world and the role that humans are playing in the destruction of the world.
Wow.
And he goes and he sits with this grandfather tree, and is just pouring out his heart. And he receives this stream from the tree, and then one of his elders comes and sits with him by the tree and then invites him to go on a walk with him.
Oh my gosh.
And they walk up this gorge, and as they walk up this gorge along the sparkling stream, grandfather starts to notice how the side of the stream that they're walking on, the trees are really healthy and the forest is just incredibly beautiful. And on the other side of the stream, the trees are kind of diseased looking, and they're all kind of bent over, and the plants aren't healthy, and there aren't very many birds. And the further they walk up the gorge, the more this distinction becomes clear. It becomes, the side is so beautiful, the other side is just not doing so well at all. And as they're walking, his elder starts to talk to him about how this side of the forest is so beautiful because he has been returning to this forest over decades of wandering the forest.
Wow.
And studying the forest and helping the forest to thrive. And it really reframes for grandfather the role and the purpose of humans, how we are here to be stewards of the natural world, and how actually we're not, just like a plague on the earth.
Right.
But when we're in right relationship with nature, we actually are protectors and stewards of nature, and nature can thrive and reach more of its own pinnacle of beauty through collaboration with us.
Oh,
And
wow.
that book at a time where I was feeling pretty discouraged myself about like what the role of humans here on this earth, like what my purpose is.
Yeah.
It's the first time that I'd really felt truth when people talk about purpose. I'm like, yes, this makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I can really feel this. And I feel like that has really informed my path moving forward as an animist, as a person who sees the world as alive, and who sees it to relate well with all people, not just living humans, but the tree people, the water people.
I love that.
And yeah, so that was a kind of a pivotal book for me. I probably read it in my early 20s and been informing my path for quite a while.
Yeah, what a book. How did that, I'm curious, how did it come to you? How did you find it? That's such a unique book that I think, what is it? I don't remember the expression, but like a pin in a haystack.
It's hard to needle. Yes,
needle in a haystack. Yeah. And so I'm just curious, how did you and the book meet?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think I found it on my boyfriend at the time's bookcase.
Oh,
Like, I think he had it, and he grew up on the East Coast, and Tom Brown has the Tracker School, which is a like tracking and wilderness skills school that is in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey. And
oh.
so I think there was just like more access to things like that for him when he was growing up than there were for me, who grew up in the middle of the cornfield in Kansas.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think I found it through him. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I think, and we talked a little bit, or I mentioned to you before we got on to the podcast about how you also inspired me through another book. And so I just think that's so lovely how we're all helping each other and propagating and the pollen spreading. And all of that is, it's not what is it called? A clear connection, but
Yeah.
everything, it's a web, everything connects. Just for the listeners, Larissa, please correct me, mentioned a book called Existential Kink. And in it, there's an activity where it's all about writing letter to fear, to our fears, naming the fears. And I loved it. I did it. I think it's 2 weeks, 14 days.
Yes.
And yeah, I wanted to ask you how you got into, well, how do you define being a witchy healer and all of that? But webbing in the books and everything. Yeah, how has your journey been? So you said in your 20s you found that, or that book found you. And then since then, have you continued that, developing that witchy healer path? Was that kind of a clear next step, or how did that come about?
That's another very good question. I want to back up and talk about Existential Kink for a moment, because that is another book that definitely had a big impact on my life.
Please.
And after reading that book, it's by Carolyn Elliott. Her last name is now Lovewell.
Okay.
After reading that book, I joined her community. I became a certified coach in her work. And one of the things that I so love about that work is this underlying what is the word I'm looking for? The groundwork of radical acceptance, not even acceptance, radical approval for everything that's in your life, for who you are, and how that is what actually allows for things to shift, to transform, for healing to take place.
Yeah.
And even in that exercise that you mentioned, the deepest fear, it's the deepest fear inventory. And it is, you can just read her book and you can do it yourself.
Yes.
Saying that to anyone who might be listening to that right now, I highly recommend it.
Yes.
It's a way of making conscious things that are these fears that are stopping us from doing what we want to be able to do.
Yes.
And so it actually starts out, dear creator, God, guides, whoever it is that you're speaking to, I absolutely refuse to whatever it is that you want. So if you want a new partner, I absolutely refuse to, ever have a loving, committed partnership, because I have deep fear that. And then you write out, because I have deep fear 20 times.
Yes.
And then there's a prayer something that you write at the end as well, that kind of helps to bring it all together and to clear everything a bit. And you burn it. And it's this kind of ritual that you do for 14 days.
Of it. Yes.
Yeah. And so that was another book that had big impact, because I actually have been following her work and became a coach in her method.
Awesome.
But it's really that idea of radical approval, like still to me, like, oh my God, I just yelled at my son again. I just yelled at my son again. And can I find approval for myself for that? And not versus judging myself or shaming myself or beating myself up for it, which doesn't really lead to much change. But if I can find, and this is kind of radical subversive stuff, but like if I can find the part of me that really enjoyed yelling at my son, and celebrate that part of me, and through being seen, it shifts and it changes. And then I'm more easily able to make amends or to course correct than I could if I was just beating myself up or judging myself for it.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. And thank you for that because, yeah, I just jumped from one thing to another and people needed that context. So thank you for that. And I love that radicalness because I think so much of society now is normalized or standardized and structured that when anger comes up, when unpleasant emotions come up, when chaos that is, I think, part of the norm, like storms happen and nature has its unwieldy nature, honestly, and we're not allowing ourselves approving of that. So I think that's wonderful. I'm also going to dive deep into her work or work with you on that because I think that's awesome. But how did you, I guess, going back to my question of the path, how did you up, give yourself approval maybe back in your 20s to walk down those steps if you did, or what were the steps that then led you to the path you're on now? Yeah, I'm just so curious about the path building.
Yes. It's been a very meandering path. Some people have these clear visions of where they need to go and what they're going to do with their lives. I have not been that fortunate. And in part, it's because what I'm doing now wasn't even within the realm of possibilities for when I was younger.
Right.
I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian evangelical community and doing things like ritual and talking with trees and communing with the unseen.
Yeah.
And having radical approval for all these things that, you're definitely going to go to hell for.
Right.
There wasn't even words for that.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's really been just a step-by-step process of following like, oh, this is kind of where my body, this is what really lights me up. And so I'm going to go in this direction, in this way. And then each step just kind of leading to the next.
Wow.
And so I started off in body work and doing orthobionomy, which is really amazing body-centered trauma resolution work.
Okay.
Yeah, both like on the body, like doing body work and also like energy work.
Wow, beautiful.
And yeah, it's really good work. And I just kept feeling like something was missing with that too. So, meeting the boyfriend who introduced me to grandfather, even though it was not intentional on his part, with him started to find this path of nature connection. Into that world that is through the lineage of Tom Brown and through who he calls grandfather.
Beautiful. Wow.
And still felt like there was more that was happening.
Yeah.
And then another friend of this boyfriend became my husband. Another friend of his, another of my husband's friends.
Oh my God.
Working with this elder named Malidoma Somé, who hails from the Daguerre people of West Africa.
Okay.
And so my husband and I were out for a walk, and he's like, I think there's something to this work, and this might be what you're looking for. And he was speaking specifically about the ancestors.
Oh,
and I was like, no, I don't think so. I think you're wrong, actually. Like, I'm pretty sure you're wrong because the ancestors are creepy and weird. And, clearly, again, from my background, like, I'm going to go to hell for even talking about the ancestors.
Right. Yeah.
So, this is another way that I have taken step by step is through resisting the things that I know I need to do.
Yeah.
Being completely convinced that it's not the right thing to do, and then being shown later that, okay, maybe I was wrong. So there's been a lot of humility and humbling on this path.
Yeah.
But at some point, I decided that I would light a candle for my ancestors while I was doing my daily writing practice, because I wouldn't be here without them. And I'm like, well, it does make sense to honor them.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so I did that and opened up, and a time like 10 days of such turmoil and chaos and grief and fear and anxiety and insecurity and awfulness, to the point where I thought that was just going to be how I was for the rest of my life. And part of that was because I just lit the candle for my ancestors without any boundaries or discerning or clarifying who I was calling in.
Right.
I was just calling in them all. And as it happens, I'm a person living in Western civilization where there has not been any ancestral connection within my lineages for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so it was swept up in a huge field of grief and trauma and all of these unhealed things within my lines. Fortunately, I did start learning how to have boundaries during those 10 days, how to call in the well ones versus everyone.
Beautiful.
At the end of those 10 days, all of a sudden, I could hear my ancestors. I could feel them. I had this like sense of just like, you know, a warm, cozy blanket surrounding me. I had a couple like incidences of like direct experiences with like my grandmother who I'd known in real life showing up in a really beautiful way. That was really like my entry point into ritual and into the next layer of animism that had been initially introduced through the grandfather book.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So continue to go from there. Yeah.
Wow. There's so much to pick from there, but I just want to say that's awesome. That's just awesome, because I think number one, it takes a lot of bravery and courage that within yourself to be able to push past resistance, to recognize the resistance, to juggle the resistance while trying to be in the norm, in the matrix. So number one, I just wanted to acknowledge that. But the number two, the fact that it was also seen by others, because I think that's another piece that we were alluding to a little bit, is through others, through our community and loved ones, maybe seeing something in us or offering something or just having something, and then it strikes a chord within us. So yeah, I just think that is beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, even with the existential kink book, to go back to that, you know, a friend of mine gave me that book saying, hey, I think you'd really like this. Yeah. And then later I had like a newsletter reader just like say, oh, you know, I think you'd really like this book, and send it to me again. And then I finally read it. But it was, you know, people again, exactly like you said, seeing something in me and making that link for me.
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh. So then kind of fast forwarding to today, I guess, and then thinking about how, you know, online entrepreneurship, providing a space for witchy healers, that wouldn't have been anything in like the reality, couldn't have thought about that for technology reasons, but also the inner resistance and just the world you were inhibiting before. So how has that been now, being a solopreneur, entrepreneur, providing a wider space and boundaries and all of that? Like, how is this next chapter or this new chapter?
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of the question you asked before that I didn't answer. Like, who is a witchy healer?
Oh,
and,
okay.
Let me start there.
Okay.
And then I'll see if I can jump into the other question. So I think of witchy healers as, well, the witchy part is that and being in communication with the unseen, like recognizing that spirit animates all, and that we can be in relationship with the trees, with the waters, with the birds and the squirrels, with the mountains, with the earth. And so that's pretty much what I mean by witchy. I'm not necessarily meaning that you're casting spells or doing things like that, although you might be. That's totally can be a part of it too, because witchy can take so many forms.
Yes, 100%.
And the healer part is it's mostly that you're on a healing path yourself, and that allows, through being on your own healing path, allows you to inhabit a space that brings healing to others.
Beautiful.
And so my people often are kind of doing things that are more considered healing work, like body work or coaching or energetic work, healing. And also there's some of them who are writers or authors or working with, or more like more standard professions like therapy or acupuncturist or things like that. So it's a pretty wide range when I get to healer.
Okay. Yeah. And they both heal. I mean, witchiness also is healing, and then healing is also witchiness. Like, I think that's also beautiful. Yeah. And then, and also I might be throwing in another piece to this, because that's
great.
part of my, Yeah, that's why I try to have some structure, because if not, I just go on tangents forever. So one other thing I wanted to ask is the ortho, bi-
Bionomy.
please, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you explain that too? And then we'll jump to the future or back
Yeah,
to the
that's the
um
body work that I was doing originally. And it still informs, I would say, still the foundation for everything that I do, except it's the person is generally on the table, although they don't have to be. You might even be like in a in a different country or something, because you can do the remote work with it as well.
right,
And
right.
it's structural work, meaning that it was working with the alignments of bones and joints and tissues, developed by an osteopathic physician in the 1970s who also was a judo master and spent a lot of time in India. So he was bringing a lot of different philosophies together.
That's
And
awesome.
what it resulted in is a form of body work where the practitioner is helping the client really get more a sense of what's happening in their own body. So
Mm,
if your shoulder is up like this, an orthobiotomy is not going to push it down and try to stretch it out. An orthobiotomist will actually exaggerate that lift so your body can feel what's happening. So your body can recognize how it's holding itself. And
oh,
then your body just lets it go.
that's wonderful.
And so
Wow.
it's really about like building awareness, helping the client build awareness of how their body is holding itself. And then the opportunity for change presents itself.
Wow.
It's
And
very nonviolent. It's very just um, honoring of the client and the body as it is. It's offering radical approval to the body as it is. Like,
as it is,
I'm
yeah.
just kind of seeing that thread now, how that thread has been present.
Yeah.
I didn't have that phrase for it back then, but it is an apt phrase.
Yes. No, and I think I'll just mention a few things because I know we have to go back to the future. I just like throwing in that fun, sorry. But the piece about not having language or not knowing, like, the path isn't created for us. We have to create our own. And in that creation, we are always, or not, I don't know, always passively, but in a creation mode within ourselves, this
Mhm.
connection piece. So I think that's really for me. What I kind of highlighting for that is, it's hard to know what we don't know. It's hard to speak to
Yes.
something that we don't. We're developing the language for it. Kind of going back to the ancestors piece. Um, on my side, I'm first generation Salvadorian American, so I'm the first in my family, one of the first born in the United States. So thinking about culture and lineage is so different, I
Mhm.
think, because
Yes.
um, and then my last name is Sands, which is a British last name, and I did a whole DNA test to figure out. And so I think to not go down that full rabbit hole, because that's a whole rabbit hole.
Mhm.
I think it's just it's so essential now. It's not even just, I think, important. It's so essential to be able to know all these different pieces of us that, if we're not aware, are shaping us, and kind of also creating our path without us knowing, kind of
Yeah.
that unconscious. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to say about the language piece. The Even if we don't know, we don't have the words to describe, but walking the path regardless.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that resistance piece, that approval piece, I think, is so important.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so often I find that for me to be true, for myself at least, to be true, that I am just following like the feeling of something and I don't really have the language. I don't have the understanding until maybe like years or decades later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And so then I guess that might be a good segue for the future, please. So now looking back, maybe seeing how all of the pieces fit together, and maybe some don't, maybe they've shaped and transformed, or some have been let go. I don't know. How has it been now being an online entrepreneur? Because it's different, I'm thinking, than
Yeah.
a brick and mortar. How has that process been? Yeah. And then, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a combination right now because I do some in-person
Oh,
rituals and stuff here locally in Sandpoint,
oh,
and
beautiful.
I'm also developing more and more rites of passage type work with another local woman. And so we're doing that both for like children, and then we're also doing like a 3-day vision quest or women's wisdom quest next summer. And we're going to be doing that annually.
Oh my God.
And yes, and so there is an in-person component to my work as well, which I'm loving to be able. I love to be able to really sink more into the community here through things like that.
Yeah.
And then the online work is focused more towards helping witchy healers again develop or create a business that is guided by spirit.
Yeah.
And I'm really passionate about that because I feel like, especially now in these times when everything is so uncertain. I mean, things are always uncertain, but they feel extra uncertain and extra tenuous right now.
Yeah.
I feel like the way through is through our connection and collaboration with the unseen.
Yes.
And so that is where my work is in the online realm right now, is working with witchy healers and helping them with the ancestral healing, because we want our ancestors well, and we want them to support, because they are the ones I find who are whispering in our ears all the time, who are helping us, know which way to go. And when that can be a conscious relationship, it makes life so much more magical and so much more easeful. And we just have that sense of knowing of what our next step is so much stronger and more clear.
100%. Yes.
So we have that, and then we can combine it with the shadow work and helping to surface all those unconscious fears and the things that are actually our own lives and our own psyches that get in our way.
Yes.
It's a pretty powerful combination.
Yeah.
Really can catapult witchy healers on their path of being in service in a way that can sustain them as well.
Yes. And that's, I think, the key there is the sustainability piece, because I think something, I'm a millennial, so I'll date myself. I don't mind. I mean, and so something that and going back to the cultural piece, my parents as immigrants, my family as immigrants have had this idea of the stability, of the structure, of the hard work. And as we're saying, number one, that's not, the their own way. They're going to get their needs, whether it's more rain, more sun, more wind, in different volumes, in different rhythms. And so I think as a human being, just being human, a spirit animating the human body, it's difficult and maybe, I don't know, ridiculous to try to systemize and structure. This is when I'm gonna have time to do this, or this is when I'm gonna, and it's now, I think, going back to also the uncertainty piece, no wonder. I mean, there's so much stuff happening externally, but internally as well, because there's so much, I think, unresolved in the ancestor lineage and in the energy and in everything. So I think even more important, I feel like I'm throwing around important, essential, everything important. But I think the point perhaps being for today, just the inner work, the radicalness, the truth of being able to do that self inner work and trusting the feelings. Yeah.
Yes. And I have just the kind of my basic program that is for the witchy healers wanting to create a spirit guided business. And then I have kind of a higher touch group that's called the guided mystery mind. And those are the questions that we're really sinking into, is like, how do we give our gifts in a sustainable way? How are we able to like kind of bend and adapt with the changing times and be in alignment with our most authentic selves and with spirit? And it doesn't look the way that we've been told, or that we think that it should.
That's
And
right.
I find that we're all kind of in liminal spaces a lot. Like, we don't really know how to do this yet.
Right. Yeah. The going back to that language piece of, I remember it was maybe a few years ago, everybody was terrified of AI. And now I'm not going to say important, but it's so helpful in writing things as a business owner. It expedites things. It can help with creativity and brainstorm. And so I think there's this element of fear, but also not being afraid of fear, appreciating the fear,
Mhm.
being mindful of the fear, accepting the fear, not judging the fear. Because again, we don't have the language. We're creating new worlds within
Yeah.
ourselves and externally. And yeah, just thank you so much for doing the work you do, because I think
Mhm.
also it's difficult or perhaps challenging to find people that way. I mean, on social media in such an inundated online space to be
Yes.
authentic. Yeah.
I'm not even on social. I mean, I have a
Oh, okay.
profile, but I have not posted anything in, I think,
Okay.
2 years on Instagram, 3 years,
Okay.
and much longer than that on Facebook. So
Wow.
yeah, it's, I do everything through my newsletter, and
Mm,
I run a like a very low budget ad, and
beautiful. Wow.
that's how it, that's how it works, because for me, I don't find social media nourishing, and that was another thing that I kept feeling a no, but really
Mm,
resisted that no, because I'm like, this is what you have to do. This is where you have to be if you're building a business. And
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not true. I mean, if you feel good being there, then that's great. But if you're
Right.
like, like I don't, and that's also okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yes, because that there's so much out there. I mean, for me in the career space, so I lovingly have called myself a professional job hopper, because that's what I've done my whole career. And I remember when I first started working in my business and getting clients, and one of the, I think, branding coaches was like, "Don't use the word job hopper. That's so outdated." Blah blah blah. And I was like, I mean, we can agree to disagree. Don't define me. Don't put your language on me.
Yes.
So I'm glad that you said that, because there's so much out there that might work for one person, and we're all different. We all have bodies, but are different. Our bodies are different. We're all inhabiting differently. So yeah, I think that's so important. I have one more question before we start to wrap
Okay.
up. What advice or insights, experiences would you recommend someone as they're trying to figure out their path? I know we threw a lot of books out there, but maybe, I don't know, other books or resources, experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first, I love that you held on to yourself when she said the
Oh,
job hopper
thank
is a
you.
bad word, and that you are a bad word, or like the wrong thing to call yourself. And that you're
Yeah.
like, no, actually, that's who and what I am. Like, I'm going to stay with that. I think
Yeah.
it's a great word. So
Thank
I
you.
love that.
Thank you.
So like, what advice do I have for people?
Mm.
Uh, right now, I would say go hang out with a tree,
Oh, oh.
and really just let yourself sink in to the tree. Introduce yourself, say who you are, why you're there, maybe pour some water on the roots as an offering, and then just spend some time talking to the tree and beginning to cultivate that relationship with someone who is both seen and unseen, so
Yeah.
that wherever you walk, you can call that tree to your side whenever you're feeling scared or anxious or uneasy. You have someone that you can have there, right there with you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned before we jumped on this call that that you found me through the round tables
Yes.
that
Yes.
yeah. And I'm actually going to be talking about that in the next one, about
Okay.
how
Yes.
I think the topic is about finding your biz besties, and my talk is going to be about, I can't remember the exact title, but it's something about like, can your biz bestie be a tree? And so that's something just that I feel really passionate about, is developing
Yeah.
those relationships with the unseen, and that's a really great way to start. And then of course, read Existential Kink, read Grandfather by Tom Brown,
Yes.
and
Yes.
yeah, start looking into your ancestry, and
Yes.
start learning some of the stories there, and tapping into the well ones who are just waiting for you to turn towards them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
start to like receive that support and that love in your life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, how beautiful. And honestly, when you said talk to a tree, I was like, yeah, you're right. because, because there's so much wisdom. I mean, the other beings that live among us, they don't talk as we talk, but
Yeah.
they're always there. They're always observing, they're always present. They give so much. I mean, gosh, give all the time. So I just love that. I do this thing, and I'll just end this because I'm such a talker, if people didn't know. Is I do what's called my talks to myself, my walk-in talks,
Mm,
and I just talk.
yes.
Um, so I love that you said that, because it's not talking to ourselves. People might feel like that, but to start to bring in that piece that no, that is also a sentient being. That is also someone, something. It is in an entity. We might not logically comprehend it, but that's okay. We don't have to logically understand everything. So I love that so much. If people wanted to work with you, I know you mentioned the roundtable and the newsletter. Any other ways that people might get in touch with you or get to know
Yeah.
you more?
Just LarisaNoonan.com is the best way. Sign up for my newsletters. I don't post on social media, but I do often write. Sometimes I'll write daily, and sometimes I write weekly, and sometimes I skip a month or two. So
Yeah,
it's it's sporadic, but I try to writing is my creative outlet, and so I I invite you to engage with me in that way. Yeah.
beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much for today. And I will leave her links down below for everyone curious to explore working with her and learning more about her. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Raquel. It's been such a delight to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.